we needed to move forward, but not move on. And once I think we thought of it like moving forward, not moving on, was good for us. And and I didn't handle it the best. My emotions got over me because, like I said, I didn't know how to grieve. I didn't even know what you really don't even know what grieving is until you actually have to go through it.
Hello, and welcome to Grief, Gratitude, and the Gray in Between podcast. This podcast is about exploring the grief that occurs at different times in our lives, in which we have had major changes and transitions that literally shake us to the core and make us experience grief. I created this podcast for people to feel a little less hopeless and alone in their own grief process as they hear the stories of others who have had similar journeys. I'm Kendra Rinaldi, your host. Now, let's dive right into today's episode. I am so excited to be speaking today with Andy McCall. Andy is a teacher. We were just actually talking that he just got off of teaching virtually, and now he's here on the podcast. He's also the author of Pigtails and Steel, as well as one of the founders and is it director that you are for Dads of Steel?
Yeah, the bereavement director.
Yes. Bereavement director for Dads of Steel. So we will be talking about his grief journey, him and his family's grief journey after the passing of their daughter, and we'll find out all those details as we converse here. So thank you so much for joining today, Andy.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate it. Anytime I get to be Penelope's dad and talk about these things, it's an honor.
Isn't it so awesome that you could still say that, right? And mentioning her name, how much it means, right? To still be able to say her name.
That's one of it's the highlight of my day, highlight of my week, anything when I get to do that, because when your child dies, part of that goes with you, and you ask that question, am I still a dad? And that was one thing I really struggled with at the first, and now I get to be Penelope's dad and tell her story and our story, and what she's been able to do through me. So.
I love that. And now you're also now a newer dad to twins. So how about we go into your life a little bit, you and your wife Ellen, and how you guys met, and a little bit about your family dynamics and when Penelope was born, and just a little more about just the cause of death, and then we'll move on from there. How does that sound?
It sounds great. Yeah. So Ellen and I have been together for 8 years. We actually met at one of the most unromantic places in the world. We met at our elementary school. Our city schools has field day. So, hundreds of kids running around. It's hot. It's, chaotic. And that's where we actually met, was at field day. And she was a school nurse at one of the other schools. And I was at another elementary school in 5th grade at that time. And so we hit it off.
So if the schools had not had a field day if your school had not had a field day against the other school, you would have not met the love of your life.
Right. I know
it is romantic. I actually think that is romantic.
It is one of those things that we laugh at now, that how hot and sweaty, and kids and parents and races and all that, and there she was. So I knew it.
You're like,
knew it from
yeah,
the
you
beginning.
Could be like, I saw her from across the sea of children running the race.
From across
the field, sweat dripping down her forehead as she stood there, handing a child.
Well, that might be
handing a child.
That might be the next
handing
book.
a child a Band-Aid to put on their boo-boo.
There it is. Oh, well, I was trying to write. Yeah, that sounds like
I just started. I just created your intro right there. So I'll make sure to send you a copy. You make sure to listen to this podcast over and over so you can write down those at the end.
There we go.
That's awesome. So that's how you guys met, and then how long after you met did you get married?
Oh man, so that's a blur. So so it was a little about a year. We were together for a year to two, and then got married and, decided we want to do, have children and go from there. And so we had to do IVF for Penelope. We did IVF for both Penelope and our twins. It's funny. Penelope was our very first try, and our twins were our very last try. So that's pretty special to have
Wow.
there, and it was. But Penelope, like you said, Penelope, she was our first. So she was born in 7/11/14, 2014, and she had a medically rare life or a medically difficult life. But we always said that we didn't want her diagnosis to be her definition because there were all these things that were so rare. And we used to joke she never got a cough or the sniffles or anything like that. But she had a rare genetic disorder, Schintzel Gideon Syndrome, and which we only come to find out after she passed away really what it
Can you
was. And
repeat that syndrome
you know,
again? What?
Schintzel Gideon
Okay.
Syndrome, and it's like I said, it's just a very rare neurological disorder and genetic disorder. And she had infantile spasms, which seizures, and she battled those her whole life. And neurological delays and physical delays and those things. But we chose a lot of time not to focus on that. And she loved the wind blowing in her hair, and I think about all the good she did in her short time
How,
here. I'm just grateful
how
to be
old
able
was
to
she
have.
when
But
she passed away? And what words do you like the word
she,
passed away? Do you like to say when she left us? What are the terminologies around that? I try to ask this. I should have asked that even before using that to the guests because there's certain words that sometimes mean more to somebody.
right, I think it's different for me all the time. I think what words I use, I've never really focused on the
Mm-hmm.
words as much. I think, and that's more of maybe in a different context, I'll just say she
Mm-hmm.
died. And, there's sometimes I'll say she passed away. And that's one of those things when we talk, it really does. It sticks out for men, especially. I found, we just sort of matter of factly just say, she died, a month before her second
Okay.
birthday. So she died June 9th, in 2016.
Okay.
So, and, that's, I think it just with the situation, it's whatever comes
Yeah.
out. It's one of those. I listen to a lot of people, in the grief world. It is, and for some people, it's easier to say
Mm-hmm.
passed away, or, you know, uh, I don't like to think of it sometimes as she lost her battle with cancer because I know how hard she fought and I know how hard we fought, and I don't think lost is the right word. But then again, I don't know what the right word is.
It's so
I
interesting.
don't know.
Yeah, it's so interesting. Like, yeah, people say we lost her or we that everybody has just different terminologies of how they say. And you're right. I depending on the setting or who you're talking to, you might use a different phrase to,
Right.
explain the fact that she's not physically here anymore with you guys. But thank you for sharing her. So tell us then, she passed away then in June. She was a little bit less than 2 years old. How was it for you guys? Well, first off, you had already been grieving probably even those 2 years. Had you grieved in those 2 years during her aspect of her diagnosis itself of when she was born or no?
I think we grieved just some of the delays, and when she was going through her seizures and infantile spasms, I think that was traumatic the very first time because I was not a medical person at all. My wife being a nurse, she was our rock during all that, and I mean I'll give her props or anything. She got us through a lot of that because, like I said, I barely got sick when I was growing up. So I think for me it was a little bit harder because I didn't understand a lot of things. Now I feel like I had a PhD by the time
Yeah.
it was 2 years into it, but I think a lot of us do. But but being that special needs dad and being in that special needs community, you do grieve, and you don't really realize you are, but you think a lot about those things that she'll never be able to do, or you wonder if she'll be able to do. And at the time, I didn't know if that was grieving. I didn't know if that was just a loss of hopes or a loss of dreams, or
That's grief.
but
Any of that, loss of
right,
hopes, loss of dreams. That's what
all
everybody's
the
been.
above.
A lot of people have been experiencing all this year. Is that type of grief? Loss of jobs, loss of opportunities, loss of loss of connection, loss. It's just a different type of grief. Different type of grief. It's not the yeah.
Right.
Wow. So yeah. So you didn't really know what it was at that time, that it was actually grieving.
Yeah. And, I think it hit me hardest when we found out it was cancer. So, we just woke up one Saturday morning and her legs weren't
Mm.
working. And, with everything she had going on, I didn't think cancer. Cancer never even entered my mind. I figured she had a bad UTI, or maybe, a seizure might have caused something. And so we took her. I actually went back to work. Then that was a Saturday. I went back to work on the Monday, and then I got the call from my wife that it was cancer. And it was apparently pretty bad because they wanted us to go straight to St. Jude. And from there, that's when we found out how rare and aggressive it was. It was already a stage 4 medulloepithelioma, which, like it was a brain tumor. And we didn't have very long. So, from the time of diagnosis to the time of, her death was short. I mean, it was short, but we packed a lot in there, and got a bucket list
I want to
of
know,
things
what
done. So,
did you do? What were some of these things that you did?
oh, we dyed her hair,
What
and
color? What color?
we dyed her hair. It was her hair was darker, so we wanted to do purple because purple's her color, but we did it pink, and we got a lot of people in the community dyed it pink, and she went on a Jeep ride with us. We're a Jeep family, so she went on a little Jeep ride, and she got on my wife's side of the family or motorcycle people, so she took her first motorcycle ride, and we were just, what bucket list things can we do? And the biggest thing that we did, our community got behind us, and we, living in East Tennessee, we always wanted to take her to the beach. I wanted her to just feel the ocean because she loved the wind blowing in her hair. That was her favorite thing. She really didn't communicate, and she didn't have a lot of things, but when she was outside and the wind was blowing in her hair, you could just tell that she was just happy. And so we took her down there, and we got to go to the beach and put her toes in the water and the sand and all that. And we actually cut our trip because we wanted to actually go to the aquarium and do some things. But you could, my wife knew it was time, and when we got back, she passed away very shortly, right after we got back from the beach. But we got to do
That's
those things,
beautiful.
and that was
I
neat.
love it because instead of you guys just staying and um, what do you call it? Dwelling on it? What is that word? Like just you succumbing to that. You just lived it to the fullest
Right.
to have all these memories that you're able to create with her.
And that was when we left St. Jude. We didn't know if we had a week or a month, or we knew we didn't have very long, and that's how we sort of lived her whole life. Is we just did it. I mean, we knew there were things that she couldn't do, but there was a lot of stuff that she could, and it brought a lot of people together. And I mean, all those people that helped us get to the beach. I mean, she's part of their story too. So
So wonderful.
we
I
couldn't.
love what you're saying, that she's part of their story, because the amount of, I mean, I get emotional. Like sometimes people, when somebody dies so young, you feel like, wow, they didn't get to do this and this and that. But the role they serve in the cycle of growth of somebody else's life is just like amazing. So therefore their legacy continues, because that other person that met her and got to be part of that journey's life is already changed. And I mean, yours and your wife's and everything you've created, which we'll go into, has already, but just the impact of her young life in other people is already a legacy.
Oh, it is. And I mean, we chose early on because we knew some things, were going to be different and difficult, that to be very open. And, like everybody, we had a Facebook page for her and gave everybody updates, and we're able to do things. And, we wanted to share because of how, amazing we thought she was. And, like you said, even though she had difficulties, she was still my daughter. She gave me the title of
Yeah,
dad, and I wanted to show her off to the world no matter what.
absolutely. That's so beautiful. Thank you for sharing that and all those different ways in which you just made those last few months, so special and memorable. And again, all those pictures you guys probably have now as a family to remember that time too.
Yeah, that's and that's one thing I always looked at Ellen, and I didn't realize until now, and I take that moment to tell dads, take those pictures. As many times as you want to roll your eyes to your wife of taking those pictures, that's all I have now. That's all I have are those pictures and videos of Penelope, and thankful for Ellen. She did that, and now my camera says storage full all the time because I take every picture of the twins that we have now because I realize that I'm more in the moment, and I can say, hey, I'm remembering all the things she got to do, not all the things she didn't get to do.
That's
And that's a mindset. That's a mindset shift that while you're going through it, you don't really think about it. But that's why doing these things and your podcast and being able to tell Penelope's story, I hope that somebody somewhere says, I need to take that picture, or some dad's like, you know what, let's do that because one day that might be all you have.
What you said about the mindset shift is so important because it's true. Like you could totally have just focused the other way and thinking of all the things you could have, would have, should have done, all these things. But where's that going to really lead you, right? While if you shift it and you do focus on all the things you did do, it completely changes just the outlook of your life. And then like even just now, your role as now a new dad of 2-year-old twins, like it's probably just completely different. And I'm curious to even hear, who was Andy prior to, like, what was your mindset prior to becoming a dad? Like in other circumstances, were you that type of person? Have you always been the person that looks at the glass half full?
I think that I lived a pretty before Penelope and before her difficulties and especially her death. I lived. I mean, I want to say a great life, but I had parents that are amazing, and a family that's close and amazing, and great friends, and they always pushed me to do my best, and I didn't have a lot of troubles, that I had to focus on that. So I was always pretty positive. Like I always saw things in a pretty good light because of my situation. I was fortunate to have a lot of great memories from growing up and great memories from things. And, I got to live my dream of playing college football. And I, got a degree and I'm teaching, I'm teaching now in a classroom that I was actually a
Oh
student
my
in. How many
gosh,
people get to
that
say
is
that?
so cool.
So yeah, it's very weird sometimes. The first time I walked in that room, it was like I wanted to go sit in the back of the room, not at the
No,
front.
and sitting, imagine, like I can just imagine you sitting on one of those little chairs, and to think that you were once that little second grader sitting on those chairs, and now you're the teacher
Right.
of these little second graders.
It's yeah, it'll blow your mind for sure. But I was always pretty positive, but I, it wasn't situational based. It was just I just was, and afterwards, in going through those things with Penelope and having Ellen there with me, it forced me to because yeah, you can go either way. You can focus on all those bad things and sit at home and dwell on it, and like you just said, woulda, shoulda, coulda, but instead we were making those memories and, we were taking her on those trips and doing those things that, you know, now I look back and that's all I think about. I try not to think about those negative things. And, I don't remember the hospital visits. I don't remember the times, those aren't the first things that come to my mind anymore. It's all these other things that come to my mind because, that's what we chose to focus on.
Love that. There's the saying, right? What you focus on expands and so forth. And so therefore that's why you have so much joy to, when you think of her, because you did focus on all these joyful moments you got to spend with her and creating those memories. Now, how do you and Ellen talk to the twins about their big sister? Because that journey, and I'll wondering too, and we'll talk about that grief period too before you guys became parents again as well. But how do you talk about Penelope to? Is it Scout and Maisie? Is that her name?
Scout and Maisie. So they know Sissy They almost can say Penelope, but it comes out as Sissy,
LP.
and
I love
her pictures are. I love it. It
Sociology.
melts your
It's
heart
like
every
all
time you
one
hear it. But
sociology. Like it just sounds like a whole new name. Sociology, like all together.
right,
Cute.
yeah, it's like sometimes I'll call her that instead of
Love
Penelope. Like, oh, so, because her pictures are all around the house and they're everywhere. I mean, they're behind me. They're, and they see her everywhere. And we're still learning how to talk to them, or we're still wondering, when are those conversations? Obviously, them being almost 3, we're not having deep discussions yet, but you know, they know her. They know what her face looks like. They know the things in the house that are hers or were hers, and it's gonna just she's just gonna be part of their life. And when we're ready to have that conversation of where she is, you ask where she is now, and they'll point to the wall, or they'll point to a picture. And right now that's okay because they know her. They smile when they see her name, and we're learning as we go, though, for sure.
Yeah, those are those really tough kind of moments as parents that we don't even like when we're having to explain to our children, you know, like what do we say like to a 2-year-old like about like how do you explain like where is she like where is she like where is it's like do you say in her heart or like in your heart or what and what is age appropriate at each stage of their life, right, as well, like you start kind of thinking that I had my first pregnancy was a miscarriage, and so with the kids hadn't told them that we had you know, uh, that they could have probably not even existed, really, probably. Who knows? Because life would have been a different way, right? But there's a stuffed
Right.
animal that my son sleeps with. It's a huge cow. He's 13. He's almost 14. Okay. But
We won't tell him.
well, everybody knows now. But he is this stuffed animal that actually my husband had gotten when we found out we were pregnant, and so but that's his, and that's been his since he was born. He's the oldest, and so one time when they were about maybe 5 and 6, something around that, or 6 and 7, I forget what age, my kids are a year apart, was when I said, that cow actually was gonna be somebody else's, and that's when I told them. And so because it was something that was it, so it's now they know, now they know. And I say, you have a little baby sibling, and I don't know what the gender was, and it's always with you too, and you can think of it, of your sibling, and just kind of send love, and things like that. So yeah, you'll every parent will find the right time, the right place, and maybe it's not even the right words because
I think it's whatever happens
yeah.
happens, and I think her being just a part of their life, right now, is they know that's her pictures and her things, and you can tell him too. And like a lot of people know this, my friends and things, but I actually have by my bedside, and anytime I go speak somewhere, I actually take Penelope's rabbit, which is her. She's got a little rabbit that you can usually find it like hanging out of my backpack or something like that, and it's by my bedside when I sleep. So if he ever feels bad about it,
Yeah.
there's also a 35-year-old man that has his daughter's
That's
rabbit sitting
perfect.
next
No,
to him.
my
So,
son will never feel bad. He's all his friends, even at school, know he has his cow. So it's like yeah, it's comfort, and that's fine. So now let's
oh
talk
yeah.
about that period of time. Then uh, uh, um, you have you came back from the beach, and then you're dealing now with her having passed away. What did you guys do? What did you hold on to? What tools did you have now to navigate this new stage of your grief journey?
That the first part, I think, for everybody, it's a fog. Like we were just in that fog of what do I do? What do we, where do we even go from here? Because as a dad, especially, I lost my why. When Penelope was born, she was my why. She was my everything. And when she died, I had those questions. What am I going to do? Am I a dad? Do I even go back to work? How do I even look at kids? I'm a teacher, and I'm sitting in kids, and I'm a high school football coach at the time, and I've got to be all in it for them too. And you know, I, Ellen and I worked really well together, and we leaned on each other, and I she handled it in her way. I handled it in mine. And, we came together and realized that we needed to move forward, but not move on. And once I think we thought of it like moving forward, not moving on, was was good for us. And I didn't handle it the best. My emotions got over me because, like I said, I didn't know how to grieve. I didn't even know what, you really don't even know what grieving is until you actually have to go through it. And she, sometimes I say she's a saint for putting up with me and the things that I put her through and said sometimes, we all do. And she had a lot of friends that, were her friends that were close to her. And I had some friends that really rallied around me. And, we had a great community support, which I know is not, everybody's answer. But, we were so open with Penelope. We had a lot of people that wanted to help. And that really helped us because, in a way, I didn't have to explain my story to everybody every single time. Everybody sort of knew it. And, you know, that made it comfortable some days, that made it uncomfortable other days. And I think that just trying to grieve and saying, okay, I'm going to try to go to the grocery store today, or that was what worked for us. And, for me, not handling it right, you know, I had all these thoughts in my head. I had all these things going on in my head, and I said, I've got to get them out. Working out wasn't helping. It was helping for the hour I was working out, but and then I did have to go back to work. She passed away in
I
the
was just
summer,
gonna
so we were on
say,
summer break for
yeah, I was just
teaching.
gonna say, what a, I mean, again, this is one of those sometimes silver linings. You guys had already built in this period, at least. Of course, it's an eternity to grieve, but at least that to be able to really be in your emotions and not have to be in front of children for your teaching, yeah? Not having to put that
Right?
that.
Yeah. It was nice, not having that sitting right there, but and I had my principal at the time who. He said, you take that time. You don't have to explain to me that if you need a couple extra but it was best for me to go
Mhm,
back
mhm.
because I found out the more I sat here, the more I, like you said earlier, dwelled on those emotions, and it wasn't helping me. And then I started writing. So I started writing my thoughts down, and not that I'd written very much before, but just like anybody. But I was like, man, this is how I got it out. And when I wrote things down, I never read them again. And
Oh.
a couple people, I'd put a couple on Facebook there through a blog. We sort of started that because people were still wondering how I was acting. So I put them in a blog, and like I said, I still never read them. And we eventually turned that into the book Pigtails
Now,
and
did you
Steve.
read it?
And
Did you
Pigtails,
read it to publish your
I've
book?
I,
Did you read it
I
then?
have not. I still have not read my book. I've not read. I know what's in it a little bit, but with my wife and then two ladies that are very special to me. They're former teachers. They're both retired now. They actually edited my book, and then Ellen went back and put the edits in, so I didn't have to read it.
Does
Um,
it let me ask you, because I know the reason I wouldn't necessarily read, but I want to know yours. What is your reason of not necessarily reading what you've written?
I am who I am today because of what I went through in that book and the times that were good, bad, and otherwise. And I, subconsciously, I know what's there. Like I know what I wrote about. I don't know the words that I used, um, or even like the flow or what I wrote. What chapters what. I don't know any of that. But it's really, I know who I am today and how much better I am because I wrote all that down. And I just don't feel the need to. I don't feel the need to go back. And one of my goals is to go back and read it one day. And but
And then just see where you're
I,
now.
I
Yeah, kind
lived
of just see that journey in those pages. You'd see that journey
right.
and that growth probably by each one of those entries. Because if they're kind of like blog entries or journal
It's
entries, you would see that growth.
right.
Yeah, I understand. In my perspective, sometimes, like even when I listen to the podcast to be able to edit, it's very hard not to judge myself as I'm doing, you know. So I'm like,
Right.
oh, I interrupted. Oh my gosh, my laugh is so fun, you know. So I try to like skim through it because if I was just focusing on that, who knows if this podcast would even be out because, you know.
And
So that's my reason of why I would,
oh,
you
I
know what I
know.
mean? Is that because it's so hard, right?
I would judge. I would judge myself, and I think it's because of the grief journey that I've taken now and what I'm doing now, actively grieving and talking to other dads and actually putting my feelings out there versus trying to deal with them on my own and just putting them on paper. I would look at myself and go, what were you doing, man?
But
Like, what, why,
but you know what, Andy? I have to say though that it's still, I think, very, you might have thought like, oh, why didn't I share that and just write on paper? You're still getting it out. Imagine if you had not even put pen on paper, what would have happened to those
oh,
emotions? Like it was still one step further than a lot of people do. People sometimes don't even talk.
right.
And actually going to the topic of men, in which I am just so excited to get to this topic too, of you sharing about your bereavement group, because it is focused in the men, is the fact that in general, like women, you talked about Ellen having a few of her friends and things like that. Women, we tend to talk about our emotions all the time, right? All the time. That is just what we do. Men, and this is generalization, FYI, I'm not trying to stereotype, but it's a, you know, in general, that is how it is kind of society is kind of built. So therefore, it is different for men to just call a buddy and say, man, I'm feeling this way right now, right? So how did you end up then going from Andy, the one that would write on the paper all his emotions, to now Andy, the one that is now a bereavement director for Dads of Steel? What was,
Right. That's a big journey right
yes, so
there.
I love it.
And it almost all the credit does go back to St. Jude. That's where sort of my true taking that next step in grief, happened to, because St. Jude, I'm part of the Quality of Life Steering Council and a parent advisor, a bereaved parent advisor, and we help with the quality of life and the palliative care, and I started the Stay in Touch program that Dr. Clark looks over, and you just reach out to other parents that are going through the same thing, and whether it's an email, whether it's a text. So it started out in baby steps. And I was like, I want to do something because of what St. Jude meant to us, and what St. Jude, you know even though we weren't there for very long, and obviously we were part of the 20%, not the 80%, that you just feel it when you're down there. It's just a different feeling, and we knew we wanted to give back and try something. So I said, yeah, I'll reach out to a couple parents, and I had some successes. And some were moms, some a couple were dads, and it was it. I was like, man, this feels really good. Like even just a text back saying, oh, thanks for reaching out. I needed to hear a good thought or something, and it felt pretty good. And then I took the next step, and Dr. Lisa Clark said, would you like to join our steering council and do just a little bit more? And and that's when I started telling Penelope's story. And the first time, I don't even know if I made it past saying her name to a group of people that had never, heard her name or heard our story or anything like that. And but when I got done, it was this, the proverbial weight off of your shoulders. And I couldn't explain it. I sat there and I was like, this feat, that was the first time I told her story to strangers, people that had no idea. And they were so interested to hear a dad talk about his experiences. It's like, I never looked back. I was like, it helped them because they heard a dad talk about bereavement and their end of life and all that. But for me, I was like, I feel so much better. Like, when can I do this again? I told her, I said, you started something crazy because, when
I'm
can I talk
hooked.
again? When can I tell
I'm
Penelope's
hooked.
story? Yeah. And, they gave me that platform to talk in, a couple different, atmospheres. And then I reached out to some colleges, some local colleges, and said, "Hey, I'm a bereaved dad. I'm a cancer dad. I'm a former special needs dad. Because in medical care, a lot of things are going to that family-centered care thought." And I said, "You don't hear from dads too much. I'm a dad. I'd love to talk to them and answer their questions." And of course, I get to tell Penelope's story, and I get to be Penelope's dad. So I saw that value, and I found my why again. I found that why, and you can see. I mean, I know we're on a
I
podcast and you can't
I
see it,
can
but my
yeah,
face
I
lights.
can see
My
you because we're seeing each
yeah,
other, but the people, yes, like,
my face lights up.
well, I just have to
When
say
I think about telling
your
Penelope's
face
story.
has been lit up the whole time, by the way. You just have you can see, they say the soul, eyes are the portal to the soul, Is that what it is? Is it eyes or is it smile? Now I don't know, but in yours is both. You have both.
Both of it. Yeah, I have both. I know I
Yes.
have both of them because and I found, and nobody told me this when I was going to go talk to some doctors at St. Jude, or give a speech at a college. Nobody told me that that's when I got to be Penelope's dad again, and I realized that, and I said, "Man, I thought I'd lost that
Mhm.
forever." When she died, I didn't ever think I would get to say, I'm Penelope's dad, and that's where I start off every time I talk. That's what I get to say, and the power in that is unbelievable. And you thought what was never going to happen again just happened,
Mm.
and like you said, you're hooked, and it's like anytime I can talk about it, her, or give insight to what I went through, whether it was right, wrong, or otherwise, you know, there's power in those stories. And I love hearing everybody else's stories because you pick up those little things that maybe they did or tried, or part of their story that lightens my path just a little bit. And because like you said, this grief road, this grief journey is a dark path. And I think about it every time that I get to do these things as Penelope's dad, it brightens just a little bit every single time. And and whether I'm on the receiving end of hearing somebody or actually giving the talk, that's where it's at. And being able to share my book and those thoughts, and somebody that reaching out to you saying, "Man, I went through that same thing," or "I thought those same things," or "It totally changed my mind." That's Penelope still
Mhm.
working. That's her still working. Through me, and me being able to keep her memory alive in somebody else's story.
That is so powerful and so beautiful. It's true. It's like in the journey of helping others in their grief journey by you sharing your story, you end up helping yourself. It's kind of like you're shining a light, like you're saying, that little glimpse of light of hope of somebody that may be just starting their grief journey themselves and saying, "Oh wow, this person has been, a bereaved dad for what now? Almost 6 years. Am I counting right? Almost six,
Yeah,
5 years."
5 years. Well,
Well,
no, I'm a teacher.
2016. No, yeah, 5 years. It's gonna be 5 years. You see, I'm like, yeah. Didn't you just teach math this morning? I'm like, I sometimes
Right?
think I
Yeah.
have to go
No.
back to learning the some of the math ways they do now. The new math that I didn't learn. That new math that my kids, learned. So it will
Definitely.
definitely make it easier. So I don't have to count with my fingers. But in that journey, right, like when you are shining then that light on somebody else's journey that is just starting, of showing them how you moved forward with your grief and still, are now shining light on others, and then also lights a light in your own life, right? So it's a beautiful it, I don't know. I think that I believe in God and stuff. So I really feel that God made helping others feel so good, so we could just serve others more. You know what I mean? Like that, it feels so good, right?
Oh yeah.
So that's beautiful. Now, what tell us a bit about then Dads of Steel? Is Dads of Steel then what was created because of you helping then with St. Jude in the St. Jude Hospital? Is that how Dads of Steel was created?
So Dad's of Steel is actually completely
Okay.
separate, and so Saint Jude is my one branch, and that's my forever family. Once a Saint Jude parent, always a Saint Jude parent, and that sort of got me into everything, and getting my book out there, and putting me out there where I felt comfortable talking, and we. Dave Steele actually founded Dads of Steel as sort of memorial to his daughter who had passed away, Aubrey. And Dads of Steel is a community of fathers that are there to just uplift being good dads and being there, being present, committed, connected, and courageous. That's their three words right
Say them
there.
again. What is it again?
And uh, committed, connected, and
Courageous. Committed,
courageous.
connected, and courageous.
And it's just a positive atmosphere. He on Facebook and social media, they're highlighting good dads, and whether it be a fit dad or whether it be reading to your kids, or those feel good stories. But part of his story is losing his child and losing Aubrey. And it is based in Chicago, so they're in Chicago and I'm in Tennessee. And they had a few dads that sort of met and connected, sort of through Dads of Steel and sort of what Dave was doing. And he met some other guys, Don and Sam, and they're all from the Chicago area. But I really think it was me that I was either searching Pigtails and Steel maybe on Google, or I was doing something
because that's the name
and
you
I
were going to
saw
put.
Dads of
Because
Steel.
that's the name you were going to use for your book. So you're kind of Googling to see if it existed
Right.
already, or yeah.
Right. I was just looking things up. I think I had already at that time. I think we had, because I self-published, so I think I'd already published it, and maybe I was just googling to see like if it came
Yeah.
up. I was
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
ooh,
Yeah.
does my book come up on Google?
It's like we all Google
And
our
I
name,
I
right?
came
We all
across,
Google our name.
right. You do. It's like don't
Yeah.
lie.
Yeah. Yeah.
We all do it. And I think Dad's a Steel, and there was an extra E at the end of Steel, and I was like, oh, what is this? And I think I clicked on it and just looked at it, and I was like, oh, that's pretty cool, and checked out his thing. And I saw a picture of where he posted about Aubrey and Aubrey Violet, and his thing was purple, and our thing was purple, and I was like, oh, there's something here. And we connected somehow, whether it was through a DM or something. And he said, yeah, man, we meet on Zoom. We've been meeting, just a bunch of dads. It's nothing formal or anything like that. And and that was the hard part. It was like, do I really want to talk to another group of dads about losing a child? That's the setup that everybody has. Like, do I even want to do this? Take that first step. And I did. I clicked the Zoom link, and I met these guys online, and there were some guys from Chicago. There was nobody from Tennessee. There was a guy, Robert from the Netherlands, who was on there. And I said, what have I stepped into? And within the first 10 minutes of talking, like, I just felt like these are my people. Like, these guys know what it's like. And we all lost our children a different way, in different circumstances. But we all get it. And we met pretty much every Sunday on Zoom. And, it wasn't not that it was not going anywhere, but we were just talking and just talking about our weeks. And, I felt pretty strongly. I was like, I want to do this. I want to help. And I just asked Dave, I just sent him a text or an email, and I said, man, would you care if I just sort of, led this a little bit? It's sort of what I do at St. Jude. It's not my exact wheelhouse. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a counselor or anything. I'm just a dad like y'all, but I've had a little bit of training. St. Jude trains us in all these things. And I said, let's just try it out. And we come up with a topic, and we all talked, and we had a couple more dads join. I knew another St. Jude dad, and he joined, and I met another guy, and he joined in, and it just sort of organically grew to this tight knit group. And we just sort of said, you know what, let's make this official. And Dads of Steel Grief Support, came under the Dads of Steel umbrella. And we got the Instagram, and like I said, I'm a teacher. I'm not a social media person. I had to learn, some of those things, and getting our name out there. And, because grief is hard, and dealing with grief alone is even harder. And a lot of us dads, that's how we felt, because like we talk about it every Sunday. We talk about a topic, like we were talking about friends, this past month, and all of our stories, like we can all nod our heads and go, yeah, man, I know exactly what you're talking about. Whereas when we were going through it, you didn't feel like anybody else in the world knew what you were talking about.
Yeah.
And just to hear, or even see that head nod of another guy going, man, I feel you. Like, wow. like that. We can talk to, I can talk to Ellen, or I can talk to, you know, anybody else. But when you sit there and talk to dads, and we realized how powerful it was for a bunch of dads to actually talk, because like I said, we don't share it, we don't record it. Anything that's said in there, it's an understood thing of, hey man, we're going to keep it in here, and you say what you need to get it out, and we're good. And there's so much power in that after you take that first step, you want to take 20 more. It's like, it's a highlight of our week now. So Dads of Steel came, our connection with Dave and Don. Don's the president of Dads of Steel right now. And, I feel like I just met them for the first time about a month ago. They came down to
I was just gonna
Tennessee.
ask if you guys have met in person.
We did. They drove down. They were escaping the Chicago winter, the negative
It was
temperatures,
cool.
and they said, they were like, we got to get out of here. And they just drove down to Tennessee, and we met and had a good long weekend. And like I said, I already felt close to them just because of our stories, and just being there for each other. Like, we spend a lot of time on there, just talking about our weeks and what we feel anxious about, and we're a sounding board for each other. Whereas, a lot of men, yeah, you have your friends, but what do you talk about? We're talking about sports. We're talking about current events. We're talking about, other things. You're not talking about your actual feelings, and that's hard. But once you do it once, and you're like, man, I feel so much better. Or something I'm going to feel anxious about. Whether it was coming on a podcast and actually talking about Dads of Steel. Like, I talked to him on Sunday, and every one of them was like, man, you can do this. You know, just be real and speak from your heart. And that just gave me that courage to do that. They're my biggest cheerleaders and biggest fans, and we're there for each other, and
That's
that's
awesome.
so important.
That is, and what you said of creating this other group of friends with that commonality of where you could talk about your grief journey, because some of your other groups of friends, you could probably not share the same things, right? So you mentioned that, for example, that was one of the topics you might have shared. A lot within your group. Did a lot of your friend dynamics change after Penelope died?
Tremendously. They, I actually now, I had a great bunch of guys that were there for me every step of the way. And, after Penelope passed away, that's hard. We're, as men, we're not meant to deal with our emotions. We don't deal with our emotions anyway, and we don't talk about our feelings. But, I saw us drifting apart, and not because anything that they did or I did, or it was just life, and I had to figure out how to do things. And like you said, nobody wants to be part of this club. Nobody wants to be part of the bereaved parent club and the bereaved dad club. But once you find those guys who are also part of this club, and you just have that connection that you didn't have with anybody else. And, the guys that I have now that are around me and my inner circle here now are amazing, and I can talk to them about things, and they will listen to anything that I have to say. But there's still that point that we reach that they just don't understand, nor do I want them to understand that. But that's what I think a lot of us men are missing. Are we might be able to tell a little bit of our story or tell a little bit about how we feel, but there's that limit that we hit, that we really need to have something else there to help us work through it. We might be able to talk about it, or we might be able to mention it, but we can't actually work through it if you don't have people who understand exactly what you're going through every day.
You that was so beautifully how you explained that. Yeah, because you have to still go through it. Yeah, because you can have friends that are the ones that you hang out with that make you laugh, and you're part of your grief also has laughter. Grief also has moments of just mindless watching TV. Grief can also look like going to a sports game. Grief can look many ways, and your friends can be there for those parts. But in the actual probably processing some of these emotions and that part of your journey, friends that maybe have not gone through something similar to you, again, they can only help up to a certain point in that grief journey. And so having these kind of support groups have been that lifeline for you.
Definitely. And they are, and they're there for me. If they see me down, they ask, "Hey, man, do you want to go do this?" Or, you come over, do you need to talk? And they're there, like you said, they're there for you in all those aspects that you do need, whether it is, mindlessly talking about something that's going on, or, watching a game or anything like that. But I realized that I needed more, when I wasn't dealing with things right. And that takes a lot of self, actualization there to say, hey, I'm not dealing with this right. And it took me screwing up a few things, to realize that. And then once I found how to talk about it and other men that did understand it, it was like, man, you know, why didn't I do this sooner? But, I think too, that's part of the journey.
I was just gonna say
You
that.
have to do
I
these
was just
things.
gonna say the same word.
That's just
It is
part
part
of
of
it.
it, and it's the same with children, right? Like as parents, we will not necessarily parent right every single time. We will make mistakes as we go along. It is part of that journey of even parenting, and the same thing goes with grief. There's no right or wrong way of grieving. Each part just comes to each person as it as it goes. And you even mentioned you and Ellen had different ways of navigating your grief as well. So also coming to that understanding that those around you who are also grieving the loss of the same person will grieve differently, and being understanding to that is also important. So there's just so many different layers of grief that yeah, there's no right or
It's
wrong.
There isn't. It's like we want. Healing's not linear. We want it so bad to be linear. I want to get from point A, when Penelope died, to, not that life will ever be the same, but I got to get back. When's this A to B going to happen? And, you know, there's all those, whether the 5 stages of grief, and there's all these labels people put on it, but I'll hit those 5 stages before
Yeah,
breakfast.
yeah, yeah.
Like, I mean, that's like, and but that's when all that's out there, when you don't have somebody to talk to, you're reading these things, you're trying to figure out, okay, well, I'm angry, I need to go to acceptance or something like that. Whereas when you're talking to another bereaved dad, he understands why lost my cool in this situation, but he also has the understanding to say, all right, man, next time, what are we going to do? And anything that he says, right, wrong, or otherwise, I'm going to take in, and now I've taken that to heart. Whereas reading it or hearing it from a therapist is no less valuable, but it just didn't resonate with me as much as a dad, as a father, than maybe it did with
It's
somebody
like somebody
else.
that's
So,
already been through the trenches of it. Somebody already went through it,
right.
and they're sharing their own journey and what's helped them. It's very different than when you're reading maybe just the therapy book of ABC, but what, of what step 1, step 2, step 3, that doesn't mean anything to me personally.
No,
But
and it's a great place to
yeah.
start to sort of understand. But then, like you said, you hit those 5 AB
And
or
then you're like,
whatever
now
before
what?
breakfast, and then you're like, now what do I do? Like, okay, like, where am I supposed to go now? And to hear another dad say, "Yeah, man, I felt
Yeah.
that. Like, I did the same." Like I said, it might not be the same situation, might not be, he got mad at the grocery store when I got mad at school, whatever it was. All of our stories are different, but the commonality is, I know like you said, I know he's been through it, and I know he understands me, and he's not going to judge me for, for losing my cool, but he's going to help me get
Mhm.
through it. And we say that about Robert all the time. And, Robert being from the Netherlands, they are very direct and handle things a lot different than we do, even I say here in the South, but here in America. And I've learned so much from him about being direct and taking control over the situation, and changing my mindset even more from, learning every day in this grief journey. You know, I said, he's my spirit animal. Like, I think of Robert all the time when I get to handle things, and we all
He's your
joke about
spirit
that.
animal,
But
Robert. It's like,
he is.
but it's like
Uh,
He's like, I love that. I'm like, is he okay being your
He
spirit
is.
animal? He's just your spirit, the
Yeah.
other spirit,
It's
somebody you
like,
look up
you
to.
think of
Yeah.
those movies, right? It's like he's my go-to, and he's helped me. And like, I would have never had that. I would never have, if I hadn't have said yes to this group. I've never would have even
Mhm.
heard some of those ways of dealing with it. And we have a guy, that's also a St. Jude dad who joins in, outside of it. And, he's newer in grief, and he's hearing us, I'm 5 years out. We have a guy that's 7 years out, or, 15 years out. And he hears us, going through these, and he's like, man, I feel, I feel ready to handle this now, because you all are going back and forth, and like I said, we don't agree on everything, and you know, one of them will say something. I'm like, that didn't work for me, but this did, and but it's
Uh-huh.
okay. It's all, like I said, it's just giving those examples and being there for each other is what's
That's
awesome.
wonderful because it's basically like by hearing different people's perspectives. I mean, I say this even with the podcast. Somebody's listening to the podcast, uh, and they'll relate to one particular person's journey more than somebody else's journey, right? And they'll take some nuggets from this episode, then another episode, and then they can build their own toolkit. So the same thing happens in the bereavement groups like that, because you're hearing, oh, this person that's been through it for 5 years, this has worked for them. This is this. I'm more like this type of personality. I think I'm going to use these tools when I am confronted with this situation, because these are more like the type of tools I need. Somebody may use prayer, meditation as their tools. Other people might use, journaling, writing books, whatever it
Right.
is, going to bereavement groups. So there's just so many different tools, and everybody can just use what works for them or try them all and then
Right.
see
Yeah, I was
what
gonna say,
falls.
and join us next Sunday and tell us about your successes and then your
Absolutely.
terrible fails. And
Absolutely.
we, even I'm the bereavement director, but I ask as many questions as I tell stories. I'm like, this is getting ready to happen. How do y'all handle that? And we're just, because we feel so comfortable with each other, we can be honest. And there's those times where we need to be stern with each other, and there's those times where we're like, man, holler at me if you need me. And I think, like you said, just having that toolkit of all those different perspectives it's made me a better
Mm.
man. Like, those men have made me a better
That's fine.
man.
And you have
Whether it
to
is,
them, and you've been that to them as well.
right.
Now, tell us then, how can men join, how their dads join if they want to join Dads of Steel, as well as giving us then some information as to, and I'll put this information in the show notes, but if you want to share how they can join these conversations.
So, we're on Instagram. So Instagram is DOS Grief Support. And, we're trying to stay pretty active on there. And we have a lot of people we connected, we connected
Yes.
through there. And, and even like I said, even if we're not the best place on Instagram for somebody, we might tag somebody that is. We're all in this together. And, we're all in this to help each other. And, Instagram's our first, or email. My email is real simple. It's andy@dadsofsteel.com.
And you said
And on
Steel
our
had an E
website,
up. You said it has an E after the L.
yeah, yeah, so STELE. Um, and our website, dadsstill.org, there's a grieving tab, there's a grieving dad tab, and we're building that resource page, even as we speak, and changing that. But on there is a Google form contact. So it's just a real simple, maybe you're a dad who you just want to reach out and just see, like, hey, this might be for me, this might not. We have an email contact, we have a phone, however you want us to contact you, or even if you're, a relative, or a wife of somebody who, you know, just want to reach out, that's there too. So, the website will have that Google form, and they can reach out anyway. And like you said, it's, we're not here to push anything on you, or I'm not going to, fill your inbox or anything with newsletters and mail. I just want y'all to know that, we're here for you when you need us, because everybody, it's going to be different for everyone, and every dad's different. And whenever you're ready to take that first step, we're going to be here, and, we're going to bring you in, and I promise that, just like the rest of us, 5 to 10 minutes in, you're going to realize that, man, these guys get me,
Mm.
because we all
You
do.
said something so key which is that whenever you're ready, because it doesn't mean that the day after somebody's passed away, that's the first thing you're thinking of. Let me go and find a bereavement group. Sometimes it may be a year, 2 years down the line. Something comes up, like a first anniversary is coming up or a first birthday, and you're like not knowing what to do. And that's when you're like, whoa, I really do need people to talk to. It may not, so yeah, timing sometimes is what makes it, possible for people to reach out.
Right. And, like you said, it could be an event, or it could just be, let me check out their Instagram. And, we have, there's times where some of the men join and you don't even have to talk. You don't have to, you can just listen. And sometimes that's as powerful of anything, is you don't have to turn your camera on. We're not going to force you to talk or share your story. Sometimes it's good just to listen to other dads and say, oh, okay. And then maybe next time, if it's for you, we're still going to be there every Sunday. Or if I need to reach out on a different day, that's what I'm
That's
here for.
what
I'm just here to help. We're just dads helping other
What a great
dads.
resource and what a great service you do. And now for Pigtails and Steel. Am I saying it right? The name of the book? Okay.
Yeah,
For
Pigtails
your
and
book,
Steel.
then how can people access your book? Where can they buy it?
So you can just search on Amazon. So, you can search for it on Amazon and just type in Pigtails and Steel, and it's just regular steel, no E at the end. And it will come up. And, what we do, any proceeds that I get off of that, I self-published, we self-edited, we did all that. Anything, which we don't make much, but we give back in Penelope's memory to St. Jude. Yeah. So, that goes back to us, and then we put it right back into St. Jude, or, maybe put it into a Dad's of Steel, something where we can reach out to even more dads.
Paying it forward. Andy, are there any other few words you'd like to say before we close off this conversation?
I think the biggest thing is just knowing that we're out there. Whenever you're ready, we're here. We say it to each other all the time, that you feel so alone going through this as a dad, and you fill your time up, trying to stay busy and trying to push that grief down. We all do. We all do those things. But when you're ready to talk about it, we just want people to know that we're here, and we're ready to talk about it with you.
It's like a friend that's just always there, just waiting. Whenever you're ready, just reach out, and they're there. It's like those type of friends, right? Thank you so much.
Right.
Thank you so much for your time and for being back on screen after having taught all day to second graders and having your kiddos probably waiting to play with dad, and in the meantime you're chatting. So thank you for sharing your journey, sharing Penelope's story, and then Ellen and Scout and Maisie as well with us in this journey. So thank you.
Thank you. Hey, I got to be Penelope's dad another time.
Thank you, Penelope's dad, for being on. I should have just called you Penelope's dad the entire conversation and not Andy.
There we go.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you again so much for choosing to listen today. I hope that you can take away a few nuggets from today's episode that can bring you comfort in your times of grief. If so, it would mean so much to me if you would rate and comment on this episode. And if you feel inspired in some way to share it with someone who may need to hear this, please do so. Also, if you or someone you know has a story of grief and gratitude that should be shared so that others can be inspired as well, please reach out to me. And thanks once again for tuning in to Grief, Gratitude, and the Gray in Between podcast. Have a beautiful day.